Well, I've spent all Sunday trying to get treated with a couple days of medication. I've come to realize that even though it would seem marijuana is my only way out of PTSD, uh, bridge burning socialization, um, I'm known for not being able to control my use of marijuana. Now, in a normal situation, I actually can keep down my alcohol because it doesn't make sense. It really doesn't make sense unless you're sharing the experience with someone. Because alcohol was meant to be a social lubricant, a way to release and let go. But what better a way to let go and socially release than marijuana? Not getting too stoned, obviously, because then you're just, you don't talk at all. But the variables in your environment and the usage of these two recreations are very unique. I was having a discussion with the mental analyst who I was explaining I was not suicidal, but I was having a nervous breakdown. Simply trying to get back to Maryland in a situation I couldn't use a bus and spending more money than a plane ticket just enjoying a bike ride back to DC, barely even getting close. You know, I'm the bearer of bad budgeting. I'll admit it. Um, I'm certainly a bit too optimistic. That's why my bipolar 2 explains my manic can see too far, glass half full. But, sometimes in the right mind, that can be a very progressive emotion to take a step to become their own boss and take the risk of a business. You know, it's a risky business starting your own business, no matter how big nor small. But if your principal variable is to get six figures in the modern day and live relatively comfortably, it's not a bad idea. Um, but where this is going to, oh yes, so, Lance Armstrong was right, and so is my best friend Noah. Only taking a couple hits or a bowl, hopefully only once, but maybe twice if you're feeling extra lovely that night. If you're an everyday smoker, because it's become like a medicine, something you need to get over the pain of chemo or get over the pain of PTSD, or utilize it as a universal sort of Advil for far greater problems of pain, emotionally and physically. Um, this modern culture indulging in dabs and everything so significant, unless you're only taking one dab, which at that point you're actually doing it the best, because if you only do one dab every night, you probably experience 2 hours of kingdom, literally. But most people have a hard time keeping it to that. But, there's variables into which things work and don't work. Sometimes you don't want to get the kingdom. You just want a low grade hallucinogen to, take you away from the pain of compromising your ultimate being to become of such a robotic society in a manner unto which hopefully you can indulge in good entertainment, which doesn't decompose your development. But when you're under attack for doing the wrong things militarily and foreign politically, that can become an extreme survival context, which most people don't grasp, especially here and now, because it's the first place into which it's ever taken place. You can look at it like a mother leaving their children around temptation, or a circumstance under which everyone wants to nail everyone who can't control their temptations, when good development is about being guided not to give in to those temptations. Like gambling, which is again why I explained to the cashier at the gas station, these scratch offs, these gas station slot machines, are very different from Vegas or Atlantic City, where you experience a Disney World of fun, a chance as an individual to display a mental capacity to play a very risky but mentalist like game, to produce a dominance of ability and intelligence and mathematical genius, or just dumb yourself down, most likely lose money, and come out maybe even or on top a little, just to have a rally for the philosophies of risk, if you will. But when you bring them into all your local communities, you ruin the business of Disneylands, which are about taking risk for a short period for fun if you have that excess wealth. Just to understand risk itself. It's a very different complex, but I've always poo-pooed on most lottery systems outside of the Disney worlds they exist. But I have a hard time not admitting people who have an eloquently brilliant ability to sustain emotion and mental contemplation in gambling games where you're not playing the bot, you're not really playing the casino, you're playing players under which like a wrestling match, it's you or them. And who's ever strongest comes up on top. Now, the casinos have great houses, so don't forget that. But gambling's a very difficult enterprise to handle in the modern day because it becomes so lucid. But especially when you bring it up as creating taxes for schools that evidently just create addictions and pathologies, which, like I explained to this cashier, let people know are incomplacent with their everyday budget and their everyday life because they formulated something wrong. And they just wish they could have, a lot of luxury to deal with that into which they're stuck in or that into which they can't have, without finding a brilliance and a suggestion to themselves how beautiful they are, beautiful the gifts they have can be if suggested internally. Ultimately decompose themselves with omnipotently large expectations of loss just to get that chance to escape. It points out to the group who's not happy, and they're not sure how to deal with that. I mean, people could be also getting drunk and being stupid, but a lot of times it's people desperate for the escape. I dreamed of the escape without ever even indulging in it, just to be the guy who could fix all the homeless people's problems. But that was bizarre as a young age. I quickly got out of that and got into banking fantasies at the age of 8 to manifest a circumstance into which I could bring positive interests into my mathematical ability as opposed to my spelling ability, to, get a good salary and bring honesty to loan creation in a decent way, which is what every banker seeks to really do, except when the world works against them, Then it becomes like a casino. Nobody really knows what it means. These banks are all indulgent on a long-term process of benefit, with people increasing in short-term jumps. So how do you fix that psychologically from a capital standpoint? The world has many brilliant men who have displayed many brilliant words to grasp this phenomena rationally, physically, literally. But how do we all work together? You know, it's like the pharmaceutical company having pharmaceutical reps in between mass producers with super minds creating chemicals to fix problems, and the self-indulgent, you know, pricers of their doctor ship to prescribe them being manipulated by country club games to keep it going as much as they can. We worked on that somewhere around when I was, I believe, 17. I was working in a recruiting firm that was dealing with salesmen. And salesmen were no longer allowed to take the pharmacists out to, or pharmaceutical reps, or psychiatrists and people who could prescribe drugs out to country clubs to sell drugs. Even though this isn't a black market, this is a reality where we're trying to fix mental contexts to an ever-evolving, stressful environment. But how can we all bring holism, efficiency, and effectiveness to a point under which we feel the capability to look into the mirror and grasp how righteous we are? Similarly, how does this foreign policy deliberate upon a neocon society giving in to authoritarian military variables from a 5% democracy upon a world which doesn't grasp our country yet, doesn't grasp our values, doesn't grasp our interests, and has many laymen and countrymen who thought like our principal forefathers in rebellion against the status quo because it's too constructive and constructed without a heart and soul to giving us our renaissance, if you will. It's quite difficult, but with the manner of automation manifesting a world into which robots will take over the unskilled trades markets, which have already been over-concealed and over-consumed by capitalist interests to simplify everyday man's objectives, to leave them with less of a challenge and a sort of consistency in everyday operation. Where will we take it? I hope in a world where we all, are organizing and scheduling ourselves for philosophical and environmental volunteer interests, while letting the truly intelligent take on the definitive design of our ultimate community's reproduction of these robots and AIs, manifesting mass production in the future. But the difficulty between rationalizing that is so magnificently difficult when they all see Hollywood projecting sort of the most pathological possibilities of these variables coming into fruition. So, what do you do? What do you think? How do you manifest the future when the future in foresight in most men is working against itself into a sort of pathological self-prophecy as opposed to a magnificent one? I'm not sure why I didn't get admitted to a hospital, why I had to accept a beer as my nervous breakdown override. I don't know. But they're trying to utilize resources responsibly ultimately, and they know they can't let people who haven't taken responsibility for their lives take advantage of them, so I respect it. but they have no idea how little respect they have for how easy they could get the good guys back on their feet without assuming everybody's bad. The ultimate philosophical breakdown: were we born good or evil? Are we now good or evil? Do we perpetuate a perpetuism of being either good or evil at any given moment, into which one act of nurture, one act of protection, could reinstigate the opposite, or the lack of the opposite, ultimately, if you will?